Welcome to Magic Arcanum. I'm Ryan Gomez. Behind the scenes is Nicole Letson, and we're so glad you're here because it's story time! First, a big thank you to everyone who made this video possible through their support over on Patreon. We've already invested in a better microphone, and we're getting our animation legs back as well. I invite you all to check out the link down below and become a lore mage yourself. Alright, on to Eldraine. We previously covered most of this story as it was told in Kate Elliott's ebook, The Wildered Quest, but we didn't have all the cards in the set at that time, and now we know some things that we didn't know before, so we're going to take another look at some of the characters and events in Throne of Eldraine. The whole thing, really, is an origin story for Will and Rowan Kenrith. They are twins, and they appear on the Royal Scions. Now, at the start of the official story, they're not planeswalkers yet. That doesn't happen until the very end, actually. This is made even more confusing because we've seen these characters before in another set, Battle Bond, which takes place on a different plane. That's okay though, because supplementary sets like Battle Bond aren't part of Magic's story continuity. They're free to show characters or events from all over Magic, so I don't want to get too hung up on that. I do wish we got to see the twins appear as legendary creatures that transformed into planeswalkers like we got back in Magic Origins with the original members of the Gatewatch. Obviously, dual-faced cards are not a part of this set, so that wasn't a realistic possibility, but it would have been a fun way to show that their spark does ignite during this story, because there is no other card in here that would let you know that otherwise. Okay, so Will and Rowan live in Castle Ardenvale. That's one of 5 castles that make up the Courts of the Realm. The rest of the plane belongs to the Wilds, which is full of elves and fairies and some other frightening stuff. The people in the realm like to prove themselves by going on quests, usually in Wilds territory and slaying beasts or uncovering lost treasures. Each of the 5 courts kind of has their own way of going about it, but at the start of the story, they all follow King Kenrith. He's the father of Will and Rowan, and he's somewhat special because he's the only person in the realm to ever achieve knighthood in all 5 separate courts. That's why his card, which is a buy-a-box promo, has an activated ability for each color. I just want to talk about the Eldraine story here for a little bit, because what happens in the book and what happens on the cards don't quite line up, so there's bound to be some confusion out there. The book starts by introducing 2 other characters. Those would be Oko and Garruk. They each have a card in the set, which is great. You know, to me, the book exists to give us more information about the cards we're playing with. So let's start with Garruk. He was one of the original Lorwyn 5, the first planeswalkers to exist in the game. But he's been missing from the story for a while now. At one point, he ran into Liliana Vess, and she cursed him with the magic of the Chain Veil, corrupting his blood and driving him mad. He started hunting planeswalkers and eventually encountered Jace, who tried to help him by embedding a small hedron into his flesh. That did reduce the impact of the curse, but by that point Garruk said that he enjoyed what he had become, so he continued chasing the ultimate prey, meaning other planeswalkers. This brings us more or less to the start of Eldraine, where Garruk is hunting Oko. We don't know a lot about Oko, just that Eldraine is not his home plane, and his powers include shape-shifting and mind control. Oko manages to entangle Garruk in some magical vines, and then charm him into acting as a sort of guard dog. In fact, Oko literally renames Garruk Dog and makes him follow him around. This becomes a major plot point in the book, but again, it's not depicted on any card within the set, so if you never read the book, you'd have no idea Garruk was ever under Oko's spell, or that the two had interacted at all. If something like that isn't depicted on a card, then you have to wonder what story threads are important enough to put inside a booster pack. As it turns out, there are 4 story spotlight cards for Throne of Eldraine. Let's take a look. The first is Kenrith's transformation. In the book, Oko manages to capture Kenrith and turn him into a stag, which he then presents to the elves of the wilds as a gift. Oko wants the elves to kill this stag during a ritual they call the Great Hunt, which again, not mentioned on any card. The Oko Planeswalker can turn any creature or artifact into an elk with the same stats as Kenrith's transformation. But that only targets creatures, so players are supposed to realize that this is Oko's magic that has transformed the king. Unexplained Vision would be next. This sorcery depicts Will and Rowan looking for their missing father, and their search takes them to Castle Vantress, home of the magic mirror. The mirror gives them a vision of a stag in the wilds, and then actually tells them to find the stag and they'll find their father, because the mirror can talk. It even has a name in the book, that's Indrelon. So I kind of wonder why the card is just called the Magic Mirror. They were able to name the sword Embercleave, so it's not like giving proper names to non-creatures was out of the question for this set. Anyway, the art of Unexplained Vision shows both Will and Rowan with their swords drawn out, which is pretty rude when you consider that they were coming to this mirror to ask for help locating their missing father. And while we're on that topic, who else is looking for the king? In the book, he's gone for 3 months before his own kids are even old enough to go out on their own search, so plenty of other knights make it their quest to find the lost king. Now remember, nobody knows that he was turned into a stag, just Oko and Garruk. And we can find some clues in the flavor text of the cards within the set. Ardenvale Paladin says that they will serve the absent king, which is funny because the realm still has a ruler while the king is missing. That would be Queen Linden, his wife. Linden is an interesting character. As you might be able to already tell, she is not the mother of Will and Rowan, though she did end up raising them from birth. That's because the twins' real mother was an evil witch who put a curse on Kenrith and made him fall in love with her. Linden managed to break the spell, free Kenrith, and rescue the kids from the witch. But she had to use her magical sword to do it. And don't go looking for cards that show any of this because they don't exist. Remember how I said Papa Kenrith had earned knighthood in all 5 courts of the realm and that made him fit to be king? Linden managed to earn knighthood in 4 out of the 5 and should be a highly capable ruler in his absence. But it seems nobody takes her seriously. Look at Fortifying Provisions. Those knights are toasting to the king, which nobody has seen in months. It is especially interesting that these are white cards coming from Ardenvale, where they focus on loyalty above all else. Apparently, their loyalty is to the king specifically, and not whoever is currently ruling, which would be Linden. It actually gets better if you look at knights from other courts. Vantress Paladin is still actively searching, but it seems just so that they can have the satisfaction of learning another secret. And Locthwain Paladin pledges that they will find the king even if it takes them all year to do it. Then Embrith Paladin says the king would die for the realm, and he would do the same for him, so I guess that means he's out looking for the king and risking his own life, right? Right. Okay, so the courts of the realm are in a bit of disarray with their king missing. Some people are searching for him, some harder than others. And nobody harder than his own children, Will and Rowan. So they follow the advice of the magic mirror and head into the wilds. And again, I already covered how exactly they did that in another video, so I don't want to repeat myself too much here. We're just looking for the next story spotlight card. That would be Return of the Wildspeaker. The Kenrith twins encounter Garruk and through a series of events end up breaking him of the curse Liliana placed upon him. He's also no longer under Oko's control, but it wasn't the same thing that cured both of those. Anyway, Garruk is restored to his natural state after an encounter with the Cauldron of Eternity. This was a powerful magical artifact that belonged to Ayara, an elf who rules at Castle Locthwain. At some point, she lost the cauldron, and she's been sending different suitors out to search for it ever since. That's what Festive Funeral is all about. Another knight, probably someone looking a lot like Smitten Swordmaster, lost their life trying to impress Ayara. Now, Nicole has a theory here. She believes this figure on the left edge of Festive Funeral is Teferi, the planeswalker. Now, he doesn't appear in the story, and by all accounts he should probably be on Ravnica at the moment, but it is an interesting resemblance. What do you think? Is Teferi hiding on Eldraine for some reason? Might this thread be picked up in a future set or story? Let us know what you think in the comments. It wouldn't be the first time Wizards of the Coast put Easter eggs like that in the art of a card. Okay, so the last story spotlight card we have is Happily Ever After, in which we can see that Lyndon and Kenrith are reunited, and he's not a stag anymore. Absent are the twins, because at this point their spark has already ignited, and they had their first planeswalk. Now again, how exactly Kenrith got rescued is a major element in the book, but I think the idea is you as a player get to invent your own way to rescue him by playing the game. And just to be clear, I know I'm kind of critical of the whole storyline, but that's because I strongly believe the cards and story should work together. For Throne of Eldraine, I feel like they actually pull in opposite directions a lot of the time. I would say the overall storyline for Eldraine is fairly complex. You have a lot of characters, and there's a lot of backstory and exposition, and all that has to be supplied for the context of those characters' decisions to make sense. If you asked the average player of Magic to explain the story of Eldraine just by their experience with the cards, they might be able to figure out that the king is missing, and maybe they can work out that the twins are eventually the ones who find him. It would be impossible for them to know that this is actually the second time Kenrith has gone missing, and that last time it was Lyndon who saved him, and she had to give up her quest to get all 5 knighthoods to do it. That element of self-sacrifice is missing from her card completely, and I can't find any other card anywhere where anyone has anything good to say about Lyndon. Looking at just the cards, you'd have no idea Will and Rowan had their spark ignite, or that Oko fled the plane after nearly being killed by Garruk. You also wouldn't know Garruk pledged to help protect the twins after they freed him of his curse. How important is that though, really? I mean, okay, maybe not so much, but let me tell you what is important. This set has 19 legendary creatures in it. Guess how many appeared in the book? Just 5. This is a terrible shame because some of those characters are really interesting. Check out Sir Eleonora the Discerning. She's a blue knight, so she's from Vantress. They value knowledge, and one way Magic represents that is with how many cards you have in your hand. In her case, the more knowledge you have, the more powerful she is. That's actually really cool. She also happens to be riding a unicorn, which would be really interesting because there has never been a blue unicorn in the history of the game. So how did she get one? Especially since everything else at Vantress seems to fly. In the book, Will and Rowan get help from a female knight named Elowin. She doesn't ride a unicorn, but she does have a natural resistance to hexes, which is kind of like Eleonora's other ability here, where spells cost extra to target her. Elowin is a lore mage, which is where I borrowed the name from for our Patreon supporters. And I would love to see her on a card someday. To me, she was a big enough character in the book that Eleonora should have just been Elowin. And again, you might be wondering, why does this even matter? But I have a very good answer for that. The more you know about a character, the more you identify with them, and the more likely they are to be your favorite. The best example of this in recent memory is Alicia, who smiles at death from Fate Reforged. Her card became very popular once we got her official backstory because we learned she was the first trans character in the history of the game, and that was a monumental piece of inclusion for the people in that community. You have to understand, legendary creatures are probably my favorite cards in the game. When I was younger, I played the Star Wars CCG by Decipher, and my deck of choice was what we called Mains and Toys. It was a deck full of main characters like Obi-Wan and Han Solo, and their toys, their lightsabers or the Millennium Falcon. A character with their matching weapon or ship was much more effective than generic rebels or fighters. And I loved recreating the epic feel of Star Wars by cramming my favorite heroes into one deck. So maybe I'm alone here, but when I come to play Magic, I love having legendary creatures in my deck and knowing their backstory and feeling like I'm helping them achieve their goals. Magic kind of walks this line with planeswalkers and their loyalty abilities, help them do something they want to do, and their loyalty to you increases. Ask them to do something they don't like, or let them get beat up in combat, and their loyalty decreases until they leave you. Where am I going with this? Okay, the Throne of Eldraine storyline is complicated. You've got a missing king, a search party, a cursed huntsman, several magical artifacts, a tour of most of the courts in the realm, and finally a showdown in the wilds. I think a thesis you will see repeated on Magic Arcanum is that a story should have simple plot and complex characters. Eldraine has that backwards. The plot is complex, and the characters are pretty simple in their motivations and actions. And the other interesting and fleshed out characters, like Elwyn or Cato, the king's best friend, are instead replaced with Eleonora and Sir Alan, who we know nothing about, and they don't appear in the book. I just feel that the stories should be about the cards, because I'm excited to play the card game, and I think that those should all be connected. Alright, that's enough of me on my soapbox. Let's take one more pass through these cards, and I'll share my magical musings, okay? Okay. Layla and the rest of the Brawl deck commanders do not appear in the story at all. So if you were hoping to get more information about them, sorry, I got nothing for you. That I can at least understand, as the Brawl cards were created to fulfill the needs of a specific product, so I do not expect them to be connected to the story in any big way. Arcane Signet mentions that the Magic Mirror has other powers beyond showing visions or telling secrets, but this doesn't seem to come up on any other card nor in the book. Now, in the story, Will has to trade his own secret to get the vision of the stag from the mirror, and what Will trades seems to be another vision that he has had about planeswalking. So it's possible that's going to have a payoff way down the road, as this magical mirror stews on what it means to be part of a larger multiverse. Yara does appear in the book and is a key figure, so I'm glad that she got a card. She wound up being loyal to the king even while he was missing, so it's nice to have a black mana character that isn't purely evil. Gadwick is not mentioned in the book. In fact, we're kind of left to believe that the magic mirror is ruling at Vantress. I also find it curious that Command Tower has a threatening quote from Gadwick, but as a blue wizard, I'm not sure how he's going to turn anybody into ash. Maybe he just talks a big game. I don't know. Grumgully does not appear in the story. I think there would have been some room for him. Maybe Will and Rowan could have encountered him out in the wild somewhere during their quest. But I can understand leaving this guy out. Oakham Adversary gives us some of the only contextual world building I can find on cards in the set. I think this one makes it clear that most of the elves live in the wilds now, but that wasn't always the case. So it gives us a sense of how things might have changed over the years for Eldraine. Torbran, Thane of Redfell. It's another character we never see in the books, and that's because Will and Rowan's search never takes them to Embereth, which is interesting for a few reasons. Remember how Lyndon had achieved knighthood in 4 out of the 5 courts? Well, the one she missed was Embereth. Lyndon didn't pursue her quest at Embereth because she was afraid of dying, since she had just become the adoptive mother of the infant twins. At Embereth, they value courage, which apparently Lyndon really lacked. One-way magic shows courage in the game is by giving creatures haste or rewarding them for attacking. And Queen Lyndon gives you life for each attacking white creature. So maybe, 20 years later, she found her courage? Yorvo does show up in the book, and he's probably my second favorite character after Elwyn. He's a gentle giant, very kind and helpful to Will and Rowan when they show up and ask to use the Great Henge to go find their missing father. The stones of the henge have to be physically moved to get the portal to connect to different places. So the stronger you are, the easier it is to do this. I love how Yorvo's card gets stronger with the +1/+1 counters, and eventually he becomes strong enough to play the Great Henge for its lowest cost. This is probably the most cohesive design out of any court ruler and their matching legendary artifact among the whole cycle. Which of course means that it's the foundation for my Magic Maids and Toys deck. Do you want to see it? Use the link below to become a patron on Patreon, where I share cool extra stuff like deck lists that I'm currently working on. We're looking forward to the next couple of episodes. We're going to cover everything you missed on Dominaria, and then we're going to close out October with some special Halloween zombie action. Beyond that, if you've got ideas for topics you want to see covered on future episodes, leave us a comment down below or reach out to us on Twitter. Then make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the great stories you'll only find here on Magic Arcanum. We'll see you.